So on today's show, I had the opportunity to visit with Gary Rapp and Ralana Abraham Miller. They were two brokers here in my office that just completed a lawn care business acquisition. And so we learned a lot. I mean, this company was a extremely profitable, well-run lawn care business here in Indianapolis. And they're going to tell us the story of how they completed the transaction, what they learned, and if you happen to be in this type of business or you're thinking about being in this type of business, there's an awful lot of valuable nuggets that they shared. So enjoy my conversation with Gary Rapp and Ralana Miller.
Please welcome.
This is another episode of the Defenders of Business Value podcast, a podcast where we talk about what makes a business valuable, learn the tips and tactics to increase your company's value that only veteran deal makers know. And now, here's your host, Ed Meisselgland.
So I'm here today with Gary Rapp of Indiana Business Advisors and Ralana Miller of Indiana Business Advisors. So recently, Gary transacted or sold a lawn company that focused on topical solutions, and it's been around for quite some time. So, Gary, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your deal.
Yeah, the seller came to us at the end of the season of 2019. Actually, it was November 11th to be exact. And, he was 65 years old, and he was at the point that he says, I'm getting kind of tired of doing this. Got a great business. I wonder if anybody would be interested in buying it. So he had talked to a CPA, and he recommended him to come to Indiana Business Advisors to see how we'd go about confidentially marketing their company. And he took it back and thought about it for about a week, and he says, "Hey, sounds like something I'd like to do." And he had basically we wanted us to sell it before the spring season started. That was our goal, is because
that's a pretty aggressive.
Yeah, because I mentioned to him that, typically it takes, a business of his size, it takes anywhere between 6 months to a year to sell it. So, but he gave us the challenge to sell it before the spring season started. And by January 31st, we actually had a transaction closed.
Tell me about the business. How big was it?
It was 6 employees and generated roughly $450,000 per year with the cash flow of $125,000.
Wow. And so going into the transaction, did you recognize any particular risk that you were going to have to overcome? I mean, was he the business?
Actually, the owner, he was the leader of the company. He wasn't the one that actually did the work in the field. He was the one that actually did quotes when his internal manager got behind. He would jump in, or if one of his guys had a breakdown in the field, he would go out and assist in the field. So he was a little more of an overlay. Yeah. So all the intellectual capital of the business was spread out amongst the employees.
So you think that made it easier to sell?
It did.
So when that seller was talking to you, I mean, what drove the sale? Was it price? Was it the right person? Was it time? What was the catalyst behind it?
Actually, when the seller, he had a realistic expectation of what his business was worth.
How did we do on that? Did we do okay?
We did. We actually sold probably about 8% higher than what his expectation was.
Nice.
And the key selling point to this business is he had a large a recurring revenue every year from a customer base. He typically had about 900 to 950 recurring customers every year over year.
Out of how many?
Out of about 1,200 lawns he serviced a year. So it's about 3/4 of his business was a repeat business. And a lot of it, he gave basically a discount going into the year if somebody prepaid. So it gave him plenty of cash flow going into the year to ramp up for the season.
Wow. And that's standard in the industry, isn't it?
Typically, yes.
So was his recurring revenue higher or lower or no idea when compared to other competitors within the community?
It was maybe a little higher than what his competition would do.
Nice.
But his average treatment was about 15% higher than his nearest competitor.
Wow.
So he did it. His guys were the quality of work and also the level of service and service after the sale. So if a customer had a problem, they were on it.
Yeah.
So his customers wanted the quality and the service level versus price.
And superior service or product, warrants a premium. So does the business seller feel that they got a premium? I know you walked out and you said, everybody's happy. I mean, were they like truly happy, or, boy, I'm glad this monkey's off my back?
He was very happy.
Yeah.
He gave me a hug on the way out of the office after we closed. So he was very happy. I think he relates it to when his daughter got married.
Nice.
He'd raised this thing to a certain level, and it's ready for him to go into the next chapter of his life, and someone to take the baby that had grown and take it to the next.
Yeah, take it to the next level.
Yep.
As we look at other companies, I mean, what did we learn from this particular transaction that other sellers of topical service, what if they're listening to this, what do they need to do to prepare their company for sale that they can have a optimal exit like this guy?
Well, there's several things that David did right. The seller did right. And he wasn't, 2 years ago, he didn't know he was selling his business this year, but he was doing the right things by preparing his financials, taking some of the discretionary expenses that he was running through the business. He was keeping track of those, along with taking a lot of the day-to-day recurring tasks in the business and enabling his employees to do those tasks, because he knew when he goes to transition the business, it would be easier for him to transition because all the knowledge is within his team, not just in his head.
Right. Okay.
And additionally, he did some research about, what multiple he could get based on cash flow of the business. And he had a realistic expectation on the sale of the business.
Nice. All right. So what I heard is recognize the value. Financial statements were prepared. And lastly, that, he was an informed seller on what the process was.
That's right. Yep.
All right. Well, let's move over to the buy side.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
So Ralana, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us about your buyer. What made your buyer look at a business like this?
Well, he actually had a background, had owned a prior business like this several years ago.
What made him get out?
Well, I think he was fairly young, family man, and went into the corporate world and but he has a long range plan, and it starts with acquiring another business similar to what he had before, and going from there.
So he had the background to walk in and
yes.
let her rip,
and he had a plan. He knew what he was looking for. So he actually came initially to me about over a year ago to look at another lawn and landscaping company that I had. And one of his biggest requirements was he was looking for a specific, a business where quality and that, the product and the service, and maybe, the price was at a premium. Yeah. But yet, that's what he was looking for specifically. It was very much a culture that he was looking for.
Did geography play? And I don't know from our conversation, I mean, from a geographic service standpoint, was it an affluent community that they could, obviously, if they're getting that kind of premium, it must be an affluent community, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was kind of what he was looking for. In the first business that he looked at, it fit the culture that he was looking for, but it didn't quite fit that service mix that he wanted. And it fit the financial requirements that he had, that he was looking specifically for. So he took a pass on that one. I looked at a couple other things that we had, but nothing was ever really quite the right fit until, Gary and Larry had listed this business.
I see.
And then once he looked at that, oddly enough, he actually knew the seller from many, many years ago.
Oh, wow.
So
what were some of the questions that he had for the seller that helped him identify that this was the right opportunity? I mean, anything stand out that as the buyer is assessing risk to themselves. So how did he look at this business, and where did he perceive the risks were, if at all?
Oh, I think employee retention, I think, was one of his hot button points, and we were able to, alleviate that.
Yeah. How did you alleviate it?
Well, in this particular situation, it was a little unusual. I think in most deals with this type of a business, they don't necessarily meet the owners like right away. People don't realize that, but they don't. You have to keep confidentiality with a business and protect the business while you're trying to sell it. So buyers have to understand they can't just talk to the employees. So I think we mitigated that risk by accomplishing everything else first.
Got it.
And then he was able to speak to the employees and establish a rapport with them and know that there's a future there. They're going to stay.
Nice. So what are the risks?
Let me see. What was another one, Gary, that you can think of that we had to overcome with him? I think. Well,
I know there's always equipment, the quality of equipment that you have to consider.
Yes. And in this particular case, I think that really didn't become an issue. The advantage of him being from the industry, he had an understanding of the equipment that was used.
Yeah.
And, the seller, their equipment is in excellent condition and,
Yeah. So from a financing standpoint, was this a bank financed, SBA financed, or somebody just wrote a check?
No, I think this particular buyer had some other savings and some other investments he was able to take advantage of for the bulk of it. And he was a very sophisticated buyer, so he was prepared.
When you say sophisticated, what does that mean?
That means that not only was he prepared for that purchase price, but he also was prepared to make sure that he had working capital in place and, would have the resources he needed to set up. He's already engaged someone to do some technological changes to the business.
I'm curious, what does that mean? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. But the seller was more old school. So a lot of things, there was not really any, digital marketing per se, other than maybe the website. So he's got plans to expand that, plans to, get the business into a more robust CRM system, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So he's already working on that right off the bat.
So there's always the fear of losing customers. How did the buyer mitigate that particular risk? I mean, so you have 900 that are on a recurring revenue, which warrants a premium. How do you keep that premium or make that premium make sense post sale?
Well, I think the seller's involvement is going to be key there, and he's going to be very involved in these first days with introductions. They also there were 1 or 2 key accounts that were addressed ahead of time.
When you say key accounts, what does that mean? Did they have like corporate accounts or something?
Well, some of them are corporate accounts. It's kind of hard to describe. I'm going to let Gary actually cover that one because he's a little more.
So what's a key account?
There's some key accounts where he serviced some basic commercial landscapes, if you will, like a church, some corporate buildings where they paid, if he serviced it all year, if they paid, based in this case, cash in advance, they would service the account throughout the year for a set price.
I see.
And that was one of the keys of this business, is that recurring revenue.
Sure.
He's had these accounts a long time. And one of the things, as we did the LOI, was this assuming these top 3 accounts, which only made up about 10% of the revenue. They signed the agreement to be able to, in 2020, to be able to get those agreements in place before we closed.
I see. So the key accounts, so we're talking the 10% of revenue as opposed to, going to visit 1,200 people, because as a guy that has a service, I'm like, I don't care who does it as long as they do it. So that's what I was, the purpose of the question.
Yeah. One of the beauties of this business was, the people that provide the service, they had their own accounts assigned to them.
Yeah. So
they would all show up in the same type of van with the same markings, and all the guys dressed the same, but they knew Jimmy, Bobby, and Joe. They knew the people that service of the same guys. And
it's funny you say that, because the service before us, the reason we left was for that reason, that our guy left. I mean, he knew my dog, and he let my dog jump all over him, and all the fun there. Yeah.
It's the small things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
And going back to the price, I can't overemphasize the price. When we went to market with it, if we would have overpriced it, we wouldn't have gotten Ralana's buyer. Plus, we had another buyer, so we were in a competitive situation. So we priced it right at the marketplace. The seller got to choose which buyer he wanted.
Yeah, that's a good spot to be.
Yeah. And all this happened during the Christmas holiday too. So
Merry Christmas.
everybody was on point. So,
So when we look at the deal, I mean, how did you warrant the premium? I mean, because I guess you could look at it from the standpoint of, look, we got 70% of our revenue is recurring. You know, that's enough to get somebody's attention. But to get the premium, I have to assume you did something special to warrant these two to pay that kind of premium.
You know, once again, he had a business that was a business, not the owner. Yeah. The owner's,
I guess you're right.
It was the key. He had employees doing the work. Additionally, the way that the deal was structured is that the seller actually carried part of the note, only about 20% of the note of the sale price. So,
and why did they do that?
I think for a couple of things. One is the buyer wanted the seller to have a little skin in the game. There was a transition period, which is probably only going to take about 30 days, but you know, it's a seasonal business. So, you know, what happens in the fall and the winter, and also preparing for all the marketing for next spring of 2021, you know, hey, what did you do? Because he did a lot of that part of the business.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, he just wanted to have a little skin left in the game. So if this buyer called the seller, he'd pick it up because he still has a little, within 3 years. I mean, you're either going to know it or not.
So you got a 3-year note?
We got a 3-year note. Yep.
Got it.
And we have the seller. He did a personal guarantee. So
that should make the buyer's personal guarantees should probably, especially since there's no conventional debt standing in the way. I mean, then his personal guarantee certainly means something. So what else can we tell prospective business sellers about what they should expect when selling a company like this? This is for both of you.
Yeah, I think if you're this gentleman, we see it a lot of the baby boom generation. They've had a company for several years and it's provided well for their family. And don't wait till it's too late to exit your company. Yeah. Enjoy life. Our seller was 65. His kids have grown up out of college, and him and his wife are empty nesters. And they want to start doing some traveling and doing some things together. Yeah. While they have their health. So this is, they wanted to exit on their terms versus you don't know what the future is going to hold from the economy. And it's his balance sheet. It was like continue to grow year over year, not substantially, but he had a good path.
Sure.
So he'd positioned his business well to sell.
If I'm a prospective seller now, do I wait till the season's over? It seemed timing played a critical role in the success of this sale. Is that the case? Someone should now, if you're thinking about selling, you know what, run the year and come visit us in the fall.
Yeah, if you're thinking about selling your business and you're in the lawn care business, you want to sell it. This is the time that the window is during the off-peak time. Yeah. But you need to be thinking about what you need to do to sell your business now. Because during the summer months, when you're out there, all hands on deck, you're not going to have time to think about all the details you have to do to prepare your business. Mm-hmm. It'd be good to talk to your advisor about how to prepare my business for sale, because the people that are looking to buy a business are looking to buy during the off season as well. So they're going to start looking in November, December, what's available, and it's going to take them 30 to 60 days to close. And you want to close before before February 15th, before the season picks up, because you're doing all your pre-planning for the market,
right?
For the season. So
I get it.
Yeah. So
okay, Ralana, what are your parting suggestions for prospective sellers? Having now worked with a buyer that has acquired, what advice can you give sellers and buyers for that matter?
I think a couple of things. One, he touched on something with the note component and being willing to have skin in the game. It's important in this industry for a buyer to know they're going to have that support. And also, I think that was a way to get the price up, to get more of that premium that the seller wanted.
Yeah, I mean, 80% cash is that's a good way to roll.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the buyer situation that I found myself in with this buyer, is it speaks to the being on the market in a timely manner, being on the market by the fall. And it may not be the first buyer, just like it's with my buyer. It wasn't the first business he looked at. It was probably the fourth or fifth, but it might not be that first buyer. So just be prepared, be ready, like Gary said, and be ready to hit the market. Because that buyer also, they're going to have to be in place before the peak season so that they can hit the ground running.
Got it. Well, Gary, Ralana, I certainly appreciate all of your time today. And
you are welcome.
Thanks, Ed. My pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon.
This was another episode of the Defenders of Business Value podcast. For more episodes packed with strategies to increase the value of your business, visit defendersofbusinessvalue.com for show notes, transcripts, and free tools to start you on your journey. Subscribe now so you don't miss any future episodes.